Welcome to Muskegon Rising, a community service project of the Muskegon Rotary Club. Our purpose is to create lasting positive change. We've been doing that here since 1916. So, let's get started.
Hello, I'm Gabe Gerlach, CEO of the Muskegon YMCA and fellow Rotarian. And today we have a great guest that we're going to be interviewing, and we're going to be talking about the Muskegon Community College's diversity department. And here with me is the Chief Diversity Officer, the wonderful Ken James. If you want to introduce yourself.
Good morning, Gabe. Hello, fellow Rotarians. My name is Ken James, and I serve as the Chief Diversity Officer at Muskegon Community College.
And it's a huge role, and I'm so excited to have you here and get a chance to talk to you about it, because I know that we at the Y have definitely employed many of your services and some of the great initiatives that you have going on. So I'm excited to bring more awareness to you and then your programs, because it's great work.
Well, I'm honored to be here, and we are indeed advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging at Muskegon Community College, as well as along the Lakeshore, and we're honored to work with your organization as part of that.
Well, I thought we'd start with a little bit about you. So after nearly 3 decades of experience in diversity, equity, and inclusion, what inspired you to pursue this field, and how has that journey shaped your approach with DEI work?
It has. So I've had the privilege of working in several industries over that 30 years. So I've done diversity, equity, inclusion work the entire time, but I've done it through the lens of municipal government, through the lens of nonprofit, through the lens of healthcare, and through the lens of higher education. So what I think that's created for me is a unique approach to serving constituents. So no matter what the constituent base is, I have learned to meet people where they're at, to talk about what it means when everyone feels like they belong.
I love that. Your depth of knowledge really comes through too, no matter who you're talking about. Again, I can talk just from my personal experience, but we've had, you and your team come out and talk to our board, talk to full-time staff, talk to our seasonal staff, which are usually, between the ages of 17 and 20. And it's wonderful and nuanced. And the way that you talk to people is really, like you said, it meets them where they're at, right? And it helps employ the things that they need to help make our community better.
Yeah. And over that 30 years, Gabe, I've had these mantras and I use them, little quips that keep me going. But, when we talk about the things that are important to us, and maybe we'll talk a little bit later about the dimensions of diversity, but it's things that we hold true. And we see the world the way that we see it, just based upon our lived experiences. But we come together in diverse organizations, whether it's a youth camp, whether it's work, whether it's where we volunteer, whether it's where we worship. And we simply see the world differently based upon our experiences. But if we can understand that someone has a differing viewpoint, it's not that it's wrong. It's just that that's our approach. How do we navigate that? So I don't vilify anyone, even though these are things we hold true about what they believe or don't know of yet. But I also say, let's talk about where we're at and also understand that we can just see the world differently, but we still can coexist.
Why don't we get into that? You were talking about what the dimensions of diversity,
Yes.
right? Because it's something that, I know about in a certain context, and you obviously have a lot of expertise about, but maybe some people are at different places with their knowledge.
Yeah. So I define diversity as the differences that make each of us unique. Now, it is human nature. When people hear diversity, they tend to gravitate to what they can see. Age, race, gender. Those are parts of diversity. However, a room or a situation, an organization, can look the same and still be diverse. Urban, inner city, rural, Catholic, Protestant, atheist. The list goes on and on. Native language, country of origin. All those things are dimensions of diversity, and those things make us unique. So I always share with people that just because you haven't seen it a certain way, it doesn't mean that there aren't other ways of doing just the common things. And so that's where I start with the conversation, and I want people to feel welcomed is a starting point, but the journey is to belonging. How do we get to a place where people don't have to check any of their authentic selves when we come in together? We can be our authentic selves and celebrate and appreciate that.
I love that, especially the touch point where you talked about belonging with that. It's one thing to be welcoming, right? To welcome someone, but to truly make someone feel like they belong in a space is different.
It is. And it takes intentionality. So again, one of these words that if you were to engage with me at a workshop or some sort of a training, you would hear things come up like intentionality. How do we just reframe what we've done? And then also another word I say a lot is grace, because sometimes we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. And then you're like, I was unaware that situation was evolving or that this could be interpreted a certain way. now that I know better, I can do better. And so we want to give ourselves grace when we find those new ways where we can connect. There's something that I know now that I didn't know before.
I love it. So I believe you were the first Chief Diversity Officer for Muskegon Community College. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the challenges you faced or why you chose to take on this position?
Absolutely. So great opportunity. Even though I've been with Muskegon Community College for 3.5 years, I'm no stranger to the community. I started professionally in this community with the city of Muskegon. I worked there for 8 years, and then my career has now brought me back to this community. But this Department of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion was the vision of Dr. Dale Nesberry. I was fortunate enough to be hired as the first Chief Diversity Officer. I report now to Dr. John Selman, and it's been an honor to be a part of that, and the vision has remained consistent. So I do have the full support of our president and our board of trustees to advance diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. And I do that in 4 unique ways. One, we have initiatives for our students. Secondly, faculty and staff. We want to make sure we're culturally competent because we're creating a culture of belonging at Muskegon Community College. No matter how a student got there, we want them to stay and succeed. Biggest impact to retention is culture and understanding. And so that's why we do some things with our inclusive pedagogy practices, just giving tools to our faculty and staff to help impact that. But then I have a unique part about my role. One is just being present in the community. We want the Lakeshore to know that Muskegon Community College is a thought leader when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging. So I represent the organization at Rotary as well as a number of places so that we can have that dialogue. And fourth but not least, we provide services to the business community. When I say business, that's for-profit, nonprofit, government, healthcare, and education around DEI. So we have seminars and workshops on implicit bias, mitigating microaggressions, benefits of inclusion, how to be culturally responsive, to name a few.
Yeah, it's great work. And that's where I first connected with you when you came on board. We were looking for some new trainings, why trainings are great, but to look at others' perspectives, right? To really diversify the type of learning that we're providing for, our staff, especially we feel a heavy responsibility with our seasonal staff. That's how, we first connected. Because for a lot of them, it's their first job. It's their first taste of that culture and what you're trying to build. And we're, making them responsible for a bunch of 6 to 17-year-olds. And how do you do that when they all come from different places and spaces? And how do you equip them to create the magic that they need to provide these life-changing experiences? And you're a big piece of that.
Well, honored to do it. And thank you. And I would say, it's essential work, in my opinion. I'm a team of 2, so I'm the Chief Diversity Officer. I have a Director of Equity. His name is Derek King. He's been with MCC for about 4 months now, so he'll be out in the community. But we pride ourselves, the reason I mentioned the 2 of us, in meeting people where they're at. So if you were to come to any of our conversations around any of these issues surrounding diversity, again, it's about learning. It's about, seeing where you're at. It's about learning something new and how to impact others positively. So no one will be vilified for what they know or don't know or what they believe or don't believe. Part of the dimensions of diversity is diversity of thought, is, conservative, liberal, but let's have conversations. So again, one of my mantras is discourse, dialogue, dissemination of information. I call it the 3 Ds. And so we don't debate, we don't argue, but we will have discourse, dialogue, and dissemination of information. So, we don't accomplish anything if we're debating or we're arguing, but we can say, hey, here's one way of looking at things, or here's something that you may not have known that you can know now. So again, we pride ourselves on meeting people where they're at and no one feeling vilified about what they know or don't know. But I can't candy coat it. Sometimes when you have these new awarenesses and you realize there's another way of looking at it, you might have some feelings of, I wish I had known this sooner, or a little bit of guilt in the past. But again, it's about having brave conversations so that we can move forward.
Yeah, it's a big piece of the education journey,
yes,
right?
Yes.
We're always learning, and we should always be learning.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the student initiatives? Because that's something I actually don't know as much about. So I'd love to hear a little more about some of that work.
Absolutely. So serving at Muskegon Community College on the cabinet level, we want to make sure that our students know, no matter how they got to us, that we want them to feel like they belong. We want them to start, stay, and succeed. And that's everyone, whether we're faculty or staff, to make them feel welcomed and then on that journey toward belonging. So some ways that we impact that is, one, making our faculty and staff aware of how to be culturally competent, how to have conversations, understanding that there are dynamics. I'll use this as an example. There are cultures where looking someone in the eye of authority and shaking their hand firmly is considered disrespect. So making sure that a professor in this case would know that if a student comes in and doesn't look them in the eye, it might not necessarily mean that they're not engaged. It might mean a sign of respect depending on the culture that they're from. So those are just little connections that we make. So that's the work that I do is making sure people are aware and students know that they belong there. However they got there, what we call a traditional student. I just graduated from high school, first time at any college. Whether they are a returning student. Hey, I went to a 4-year. For some reason, I needed to come back, whatever that reason is. You are welcome at Muskegon Community College. Whether it's a returning citizen, a returning veteran, or an adult learner. A lot of people are curious to know 28% of our students are adult learners, which was what we 25 and up. So, maybe I didn't go to school right away and I want to come back, or maybe I'm pivoting to get a new trade that I want to work on, or maybe I raise children and I'm coming back to college. No matter how you got there, we want you to know, we want you to start, stay, and succeed at Muskegon Community College. And those are the initiatives I do to make sure everyone can do that.
I love that. And I did not know that's a way higher percentage that I would have anticipated, but that's great too. That again, you're building a space where people feel comfortable, because otherwise you wouldn't see that, right? Or you'd see a drop off in enrollment or registrations, but obviously it's an intentional thing that you're building at MCC.
It is. And just, metrics for this winter semester that we started in January, our enrollment is up 9%. So, that is a win for us, but we want to continue in that trajectory and make sure we're providing what our students need. If I could add to that, we recognize that when we eliminate barriers, then the chance of success goes up. So if there's a food insecurity, if there's a transportation need, if there's a childcare need, we provide our best to give those resources so students can focus on the rigor and be successful. But the reason I share that with you is as we go forward, it just takes a little bit of a mindset shift. So I've heard people, and just rightfully so, because they haven't seen it from that angle, like, well, why are we doing so much hand-holding for these students? We're adults, they've graduated high school, they've navigated life. Why are we doing this? And I say, providing service, eliminating barriers, it's not hand-holding, it's providing success opportunities. So we can eliminate those things that we know how to, so students can focus on rigor, because we're not going to diminish the rigor. We want them to be able to focus on that by eliminating those barriers. So again, part of that mindset shift.
That is so important, because as you mentioned, you don't know where somebody's coming from or what's going to contribute to their inability to follow with the rigor, to stay up on that. And so by doing that, I mean, that's long-term success, right? That's a vision that you guys have that's beyond just the couple of years they may be attending, your institution. That's looking at someone as they continue in their career and setting themselves up for success long-term.
Yeah, very well. And again, it's something we pride ourselves on. We want everybody to accomplish what they came to MCC to do, whether that's a certificate, whether that's an associate's, whether that's transferring to a 4-year, or just taking classes because, and that happens where, hey, I really want to take a music class because that's just a passion that I have. Whatever your journey is, we want to walk with you along the way and create success, however that you determine what that is for you.
I love that. Yeah. And how do you see that? Because to me, it seems like there are some really clear connectors between doing that and having that long-term approach to your students, but also how that builds up a community. Do you see, I'm sure you see, can you talk about kind of that connectedness, about how what you're doing is building the community and making it better?
And what I think you're saying, and Lisa, this is one analogy that I'll give you. I had a professor on our campus. She teaches 200 level courses for us, so those sophomore level courses. And she shared with me, she says, I have a few BIPOC students. And for those people that don't know BIPOC, that's Black, Indigenous, persons of color. She said, I have a few BIPOC students in my class. They show up, they're doing the work, but they just don't seem engaged. And this is a class that I have been speaking to for the last few semesters, just about some psychological things and how your upbringing impacts that. So it's through a equity and inclusion lens. And when I came to the class and introduced myself as an administrator, as a person of color on campus, let them know where my office is, I'm accessible if you have any questions. What the professor told me after my presentation was the engagement of those students changed because they just didn't see themselves reflected in the campus. But knowing that they were reflected, they could engage more. So that's just an anecdotal way of just someone coming in. Again, no matter how someone gets to MCC, we want them to stay, and succeed. But if they can say, it is doable because I can see myself reflected here. And so it does those things. So that's just one of the ways that we're impacting beyond our programming by just being present. And it means a lot to our students.
It does. The way that you come in and talk to and meet people where they're at, it's really inspiring.
Yes. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes.
I love that. Can you talk about some of the challenges we're facing related to your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go back to my 3Ds: discourse, dialogue, dissemination and information. So anyone, fellow Rotarians, if you want to have a conversation offline, I am indeed available. But right now, I would say with there being some misnomers around DEI and what that means or doesn't mean, people think DEI is synonymous to critical race theory. So I've learned to say no, diversity, equity, inclusion. It's about education for all. So I can speak on behalf of MCC, what it means for us. And it is education for all. So a lot of people will think, oh, you're only worried about or focused on or concerned about students of color. That is part of what we're working on. But there are other groups that encompass everyone, and we want everyone to succeed. So some of the things that first generation students that they might be the first in their family to come to a college. We have initiatives that impact first generation students. We have programs that impact Pell eligible students. So those are students that might be on different parts of the socioeconomic scale. Again, encompasses everyone. Our programs also impact our international refugee and immigrant students. So we want to make sure we're impacting there. So there's a whole continuum of folks, and we're on the journey for education for all, and that's what we're doing. So it's not exclusive, it's inclusive, and a lot of people are not aware of that.
Yeah, it's a hot button topic right now. And so I think it's important we talk about, to your point, what it is.
Yeah.
And help on that education journey.
Yeah, and it is in the short term. We don't know what it will hold, but I would say from MCC's lens and what we're doing right now is DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and for us belonging. It's not going away. Our programs impact everyone positively, and it's not exclusive to just race. It's all of those components that I just shared. So again, first generation, Pell eligible, international immigrant and refugee students as well. And like I shared with that story with that professor, we are impacting both through data and through anecdotal opportunities for our students to feel like they belong.
I love it. It's great work. What are some of your hopes, dreams, visions for what the future could look like? Is there anything that you're hoping to bring to the community or that you'd like to see the community jump on board with more?
So a vision. So that is a great question. I would like to just see continued dialogue. Let's have conversations. Let's share stories. One of those, I call them mission moments. And one of our platforms at Muskegon Community College, in addition to our values and vision, is just kindness to do this. And I spoke to a business class, and it was a business project management class. And I talked about by being aware of your surroundings, you can actually include more people. And when people feel like they belong and that they're welcome, that's how you get the innovative ideas. But then I got the most well-written email from a student thanking me for sharing that and impacting what she's doing in class and how that's going to impact her at work. That reminded me why I do what I do. And it's just to have that conversation. Someone say, thank you for sharing that. And I'm able to build that into my framework to make me a better, whatever that goal was, employee, better student, better outcomes. And so having those moments while we do what we do, I would like to share that with others so that we can continue in that vein.
That's great. Having conversations. It's a good place to start.
I agree.
So what else should we know? Is there anything that, we haven't touched on that you think would be important or interesting for our fellow Rotarians to hear about or learn about?
Yeah. So, I would say this, a shameless plug, but again, if you want to experience any of those workshops, again, I'll highlight implicit bias, mitigating microaggressions, the benefits of inclusion or being culturally responsive, I'm a short email away. We can talk about that. But if you want to go a little bit deeper, we do offer a 12-hour diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging certificate program that's there. And this might be a kind of a hot button right now, but we also offer an 8-hour curriculum, and it's just simply titled Conversations on Race. And it's a way where we can come together, meet everyone where we're at, and talk about how we see the world through our lens in a way where no one is vilified, but then walk away with some tools of how you can keep advancing that conversation if you choose to. So I'm available to the community where you would like to meet me at.
Perfect. We all have a call to action. We know what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, depending on your lens or where you fit into the groups that you work with, I think everybody could learn something from you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on today and sharing more about Muskegon Community College. I learned a lot, and about your specific programs and how you're building that culture of inclusivity, both, on campus and then outside of it too, by being present and being available to our community.
And I'll close with this. Thank you for the opportunity, and through a Rotary lens. Is it good for everyone involved? I would say through my lens, the answer is yes.
And on that note, we thank Ken for coming. You all know what to do. I highly recommend connecting with Ken and bringing him on board, whether it's for something you want to do personally or for your business. He's a great point of contact. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.